Hello and welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Corey Huntsberger. I've got my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio. We're going to start off with our foundational verse, which is the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord, for he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. Dad, we start every show with that verse as a reminder that we have a creator of this planet and he is in control of all things, right?
Yeah, he is, and there's great comfort in that. And we need to keep reminding ourselves, because sometimes we think that maybe some government official or some judge or some court or some
agenda
is going on, and they're in control, and we then start to get fearful and whatever. And really, those of us who know the Lord just need to relax. I love this verse, Corey. I've been studying it a little bit. It's 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 5. It says, you're being protected by God's power through faith for a salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Protected by God's power. I love that.
You're protected by God's power. So think about that. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, right? I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. It's that kind of protection that we have as believers. Doesn't matter what you're going through, that's where it's at.
Well, someone I know who's protected by God's power is our guest. We haven't had him on in a while, but we're so glad he's back. Mikki Willis, thank you so much for being back on the show.
Hey, it's always good to be on my favorite father-son podcast. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're still alive. We haven't hurt each other, so that's good. Relationship's going well.
Good.
Mikki, we haven't had you on for a while. Before, I think our last program, you were talking about a new movie you've been working on. We're going to talk about that later on the show. We're excited about that. But also, Robert Kennedy was still in this, election, and then he kind of pulled back, and he was going to go with Trump. He hooked himself up to the Trump train. And he's now in office. We're so excited about it. We wanted to get your thoughts. How are you feeling about Robert, his new appointment, and how he's doing so far?
Well, we're incredibly excited about it because anyone who's known Bobby for any time period knows that his commitment to making America healthy again is real. As he said after he was sworn in, part of his speech included the fact that he had been on his hands and knees every morning for 20 years praying to be put in a position that he could help bring America back into healthy balance. And so knowing that that's what he would, that he lives for and that he would die for is a really wonderful thing. And that he's been around long enough as an environmental attorney to understand all the ways that humans are being poisoned. He's been the guy who has made the most progress when it comes to glyphosate and stopping, the way that's been sprayed and injected into our foods that has created a massive health epidemic. He's cleaned up many bodies of water, and now he wants to clean up the medical industry, which is something that I think we can all agree that needs to be done. And so I feel wonderful about it. I know that there's a lot of it's a roller coaster ride. Shortly after Trump was sworn in, I had written something and put it on social media to let people know that what's coming is going to be a roller coaster ride, and expect for things to happen that you want to cheer about and things you want to scream about. And what people don't understand, which I can say I didn't understand for many years until I was invited behind the curtain of politics to create media for a lot of these endeavors, is there's a real game that has to be played. I've had people say, oh, I don't think we should play any games at all. And it's like, well, good luck with that. If you understand the 100+ year war on America to kill it from the inside out, and the people that have amassed great power to make sure that anyone who exposes that agenda is eliminated, then you understand that it is a matter of life or death, and that the people that are in this game to expose it and to do something about it have to play a game to sometimes say what the public wants to hear and what they don't want to hear. And even sometimes appointing people that are a strategic move, people that might not have the best track record in alignment with what the overall mission is, but they also appease other areas of the game that will allow them to continue to make progress as long as they're represented in certain ways that they feel that there's a bit of security because they have these people kind of watching the decision makers. There's a game that has to be played. And so, I mean, for instance, I had a major reaction to Susan Manares being appointed as a CDC.
Right.
You know, we strongly wanted Joe Ladapo. I know Joe personally, and what an amazing human being he is. But I can tell from the inside out, and maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but I can tell from the inside scoop is that this woman has had a change of heart. And so I think that people, it's understand, you know, we understand that when somebody comes from the CIA or from Pfizer or whatever, that, you know, that people want to distrust them because if they made a mistake to be involved in that criminal enterprise, have they really done a 180, or are they playing the fool to come over here to infiltrate the good side? And I will say that a lot of the most important allies that we have are people who became whistleblowers. You know, when you look at, I mean, we have, you know, former vice presidents of Pfizer in our movie, you know, and people will say, oh, I don't trust him. Well, that might be the guy you want to trust the most. We have Kennedy's daughter-in-law, who was former CIA, and people say, that right alone makes me, I'll never trust him. Well, it's, you know, they say once in CIA, always in CIA. That's not necessarily true. Some of the most, you know, the whistleblowers who have benefited us the most with revealing the truth came from the inside of some of these agencies. Not all these people know what they're up to. You know, there's this, I think we watch too many movies, and that we think that there's this cabal of mustache twisting, you know, fiends that all get together and they're all conspiring to harm humanity. And the truth of the matter is, at the top, yes. But a lot of times the other minions within these agencies, everything is so compartmentalized that they have no idea what's going on. And all they hear themselves, they're the most attacked by the propaganda. That's why so many good doctors followed all these COVID protocols, really truly believing that they were, you know, honoring their oath to do no harm, and have only, you know, come to the realization in the past 2 or 3 years that they were actually serving the very forces that they thought that they were resisting. And so it's very important for us to remember that there's a strategy going on here that's military level and beyond. We as citizens may never understand exactly how that works. I'm just learning how the game works. And so I try not to have a knee-jerk reaction anymore when I hear that a move was made, or Trump said this, or brought somebody into his cabinet. It's definitely important for us to be vigilant and watch that and be careful and watch the Peter Thiels of the world and even the Elon Musk of the world. Really pay attention to what they're doing because of where they come from. Is there any moment that they could flip back and suddenly be possessed by greed in such a way that they end up, you know, doing great harm? Of course it's possible. All men are corruptible. And so, but what I know, and the long answer to your short question is the people that I know that are working with Trump are reporting that he is giving them all the power they need to do what they came to do. As listeners know, I've been, you know, close friends with Tulsi Gabbard for a number of years. And this is a woman who, there's not enough money in the world that you could force this woman to sell out. There's just not. I know her enough to put my name on the line, my neck on the line for her that way. And according to her, she's given the power and the respect that she hoped that she'd be granted once coming into that position that she's in. And I see a lot of people in the world that are, you know, like, why haven't they done this yet? Why haven't they? It's only been 2 months. You know, look what's happened in 2 months. And there is a, you know, I know when I was a younger filmmaker, I didn't quite have systems in place. And I'm very systematic now, to where if my crew starts to have a conversation regarding a phase that we're not to yet, I'll say, no, can't even touch that yet. Let's stay very focused on getting this foundation built. Then we move to that. Otherwise, it becomes, You can't fight chaos with chaotic thinking, right? We becomes chaotic because we're trying to look into the past and the future and the present and get all these things done. Real progress happens when you work methodically towards the goal. And I know that that's what they're doing. And so I just tell everyone, be patient. There's going to be more news coming out that you're going to hate, and there's going to be a lot that you're going to love. But at the end of the day, we have to look at what is happening. Is it progressing in the right direction? And if all Trump did, and if all Elon did, was uncover all of these money laundering organizations that is keeping us in poverty because our tax money is not going to what we think it's going to, which is making America better in all ways with infrastructure and education and medical. If it's going to something else, other countries for bizarre initiatives, lining the pockets of crooked elites, if that's all they did was to expose that, that's a massive, massive gift to humanity and to our future.
The interesting thing, I don't know anything about this a lot of times, but how I look at things is that when, for example, President Trump says something, how does his opponents react to it? And if they get all freaked out and they just are going full bore to, oh, this guy's crazy and everything else and all that kind of thing, it's like, oh, he hit something. That's how I look at it. It's a simple analogy, but
that's a very, very intelligent way to look at it, because it's what pulls me back sometimes when I have a reaction is, I'll hear something, there was a move made, and now there's a new war coming and more billions of dollars going to Ukraine or whatever, and I hate to hear that. I want the money to go right here in the U.S. and help our people that are struggling right now. God bless all the other nations that are struggling. But it's, the metaphor is our whole neighborhood's on fire. We have a well with just enough money, just enough water to put our fire out in our home. We can't share the hose with the rest of our neighbors. We just can't. Otherwise, our family and our home burns down. It's kind of like to each their own. Go for it. Let's all work together. If we had an abundance of water and lived on a lake or a river, then of course, distribute that through the whole neighborhood. But at this point, we're at a very critical stage where our country is teetering, and we need to put all the efforts into bringing it back into balance and stabilizing our world. But what you just said is very important, and that's what I tell people is if you just look at who's criticizing Trump and Elon and all the rest of them, if you look at their track record, if you look at their propensity to push for perpetual war, if you look at all the ways that they have been part of the criminal enterprise, if you look at, when you see Hillary Clinton railing against Doge and all these corrupt media outlets, it blows my mind, but it also shows the power of the mind control that we've all been subjected to for the last several decades. When you have all of these loyal MSNBC, CNN, The View, name all these channels, for the past, if you just go back as far as 2020, all those networks have done is lied to these people. They told them Hunter's laptop isn't real, found out that it is, and that would have actually changed the results of the election. We found out that the Russiagate situation was paid for, complete fabricated by Hillary Clinton. Everything that these mainstream outlets said about COVID and that it wasn't made through gain of function, it was organic release from nature, and that Anthony Fauci never funded the Wuhan lab and the NIH, all these things proven wrong. These people have been lied to over and over. Imagine being in a relationship where year after year after year, your husband or wife, everything they tell you is a lie. Everywhere they went is a lie. Who they were talking to is a lie. Everything, and you stayed with that person. That starts to become something very akin to the Stockholm Syndrome. The Stockholm Syndrome is when hostages would start to sympathize with their captors and work with their captors to try to keep them safe, and even in some cases, once they're caught, go and serve as a witness to try to make sure their sentence isn't too extreme. Like there's some kind of bonding that happens with the very person that held them hostage. And it feels like there's a lot of that in place right now, where we've become so tribalized that there's one side that will literally destroy their country, their family, and themselves to not allow Donald Trump to have a single win. And it's kind of like being on an airplane and praying for the failure of the pilot. You know, it's like it makes that much sense. And so, but what you said is very wise. If people just start looking at all the corrupt forces and say, well, this is interesting, that all our corrupt newspapers, the Atlantic, which is, you know, big scandal right now about this leaked information. I'll tell you something. You know, there's pictures going around of the owner of the Atlantic hanging out with Ghislaine Maxwell. They were good buddies. I will tell you from personal experience, one of the most vile hit pieces ever written about me and Plandemic, several of them was written by the Atlantic. This is a trash publication, propaganda, state-sponsored, communist-themed tabloid magazine. And they're still listening to it. They still give it some kind of credibility. And that's kind of mind-blowing. So if people did just what you said and start to really pay attention to, you know, who's slandering this person, and if it's all the bad people, all the dishonest media stations, including Fox, because I would say Fox is half good and half bad at this point. You know, it's their partly propaganda, where MSNBC is, I would say, 99% propaganda. Fox is 50% propaganda. And so we have to take it all with a grain of salt and start looking at what is the caliber of the people that are criticizing. And if it's all the same people, if George Soros is saying this guy's a crook, and Bill Gates is saying this guy's a danger, and Klaus Schwab is saying he's a threat to democracy, and you know, then you go, hold on a second here. Maybe this person's on the good side of all the bad people hate him. What's going on here? So anyway, bravo to you for figuring that out.
We want to give you some time to talk about your new movie. We're super excited about it. I know that you, well, I'm just going to let you, it's called Follow the Silenced. And tell us a little bit about this movie that you put together.
So 4 years ago, as the truth of the vaccine rollout started to reach me, I started to receive calls from victims, primarily people that had, this is early on, so these are people who were first in line. The moment they said, we now have a, you know, Pfizer, Merck, and Moderna, and all these AstraZeneca, we all now have a vaccine ready, and we're looking for volunteers. These people went straight to the head of the line and said, I am here. Now, we can call them names for doing that, and I think it's kind of cruel at this point, because when you understand that their main motivation, first of all, they're subjected to billions and billions of dollars of propaganda, and apparently the top medical experts on the planet, all singing in harmony the same propaganda, and then coercing them through weaponized compassion to think that doing this is actually the noble thing to do if you love people. That's why they lined up. And these people were severely injured. They're still in wheelchairs. Some of them still need assistance to breathe on their own. They're on multiple medications. They're having seizures. They've all been on the edge of suicide because the quality of their life is so bad. I mean, imagine, I had a mid-ear infection about a month ago, and it lasted for about 3 weeks. And I would never think something that minor could be so troubling, but not hearing out of my right ear and hearing a buzzing sound starts to make you a little wacky. You know, you just want to lay in bed all day and just cover your ears, and that's what a lot of them do. They'll wear earmuffs, but the ringing in their head, a lot of them have this ringing sensation in their head, and it's driven them to the brink of just wanting to die because they can't deal with this. You know, imagine being in a room when an alarm's going off for 3 weeks. You know, it starts to really get to you, and so. I started to get these calls 4 years ago, and I wanted to do something to give these people a voice, because not only had this happened to them, but the moment they came out innocently to say, I have been injured, you know, 2 hours after my vaccine, I had a seizure, I had a stroke, whatever happened, I now have, you know, nerve issues, I can't walk, I'm, you know, shaking constantly. Then the media went against these people, said they're crazy, no one listened to them, and denied them they couldn't give them any kind of medical assistance, because if they did, it would almost be an admission of guilt, right? Like, we can't help you now. If we help you, then it looks like we're trying to help you because, we did something wrong. So they just said, you're on your own and shut up because you're going to kill people. And so they were silenced. And so these are people that followed the science, and they were silenced. So we call it Follow the Silenced. And we just premiered it 3 weeks ago in Los Angeles at the Santa Monica Film Festival and won the grand prize. So it's, in the main theater at the Directors Guild of America, packed house, and it was extraordinary. And the injured that were there, it was wonderful. It was so deep because, as you can imagine, these people have been through hell. And a lot of them have pretty serious PTSD, because after trusting science and then being, harmed as tragically as they were, and then being shut out by politicians and the media, and then even having, lawyers pick up their cases and take their last $15,000 and then abandon them, when the lawyer figured out, oh, this is too dangerous for my career, and took the person's, the last bit of their savings. They developed like this lack of trust, as you would imagine. And so we started to feel the brunt of that lack of trust, because the movie, we never planned on this movie taking 4 years. It was an evolving situation that, now that it's done, we understand that God had the plan all along. It was divine, that it could never, if we released it 2 years ago with the Biden regime, nothing would have happened with it. But now we're in a position, with Robert Kennedy being in the position he's in, and he's in the movie himself, that we can actually do something about it. And so all the injured showed up, and some of them had been previously upset with us because the movie was taking too long to get out into the world. And it was this beautiful healing of it was perfect. It's perfect timing. The movie is so powerful, and it swept the festival, that it was a really healing for all of us, literally. It was healing for them to understand that their stories, now after being silenced, now people will hear their stories and their truth, and they're not crazy. And then that movie we have the Texas premiere in May. And if you want information on that, sign up for our newsletter at plandemic.com. And we'll release the exact date. I think we just got the date yesterday. I don't remember what it is, but shortly after that Texas premiere, then it goes out to the world.
You said at the very beginning of this, before we started recording, that this movie will silence a lot of arguments going on currently right now. What did you mean by that? Do you have like the smoking gun? Like, what is in there that's going to really make a change?
Lots of smoking guns. One of them is we have several hours of, we'll release all of it. A lot of it's in the movie, but we have several hours of recorded Zoom calls with the heads of FDA. And when you see these injured people talking directly to the FDA, and then, they're giving them lip service, and then they go out, they'll admit on the Zoom call something closer to reality. Then they go out out in public and say the opposite. You see how the game starts working. And I've been saying, what I said to you was that this is the movie that ends the debate. We literally had family members of doctors who were injured themselves who were in the movie, and they came up to us afterwards and they said, my family came very reluctant because they all think that I am crazy. And they all hugged me and cried and said, we're deeply sorry. We now understand this is real. So for the 600 people who have seen this movie, the amount of stories that we heard, we had the screening, the award ceremony, and then we had a fundraising party for the people that were injured that night in Los Angeles. And people were coming up and telling us these miraculous stories of, I brought my sister, who is, a doctor, and brought her dragging and kicking to this premiere. And she sat there sniffling and crying, and understands now that all these people that have been made to be the villains are actually the innocent victims of the greatest crime against humanity.
Wow. Follow the Silenced. We're going to go to your website. We're going to sign up for your newsletter so that we get that information. We're also going to have you back when that gets released to the public. We're going to watch it. We're going to come back and break it down and have more conversation. We are so grateful that God has taken your talents, your skills, and is now using it for good. You know what I mean? In our eyes, because you are so needed. And I know that you had to be an investigator and a storyteller, and you have to like slowly leak it out for people to understand and to grasp, because the propaganda we've been under and the mind control we've been under is so thick, so deep. We're just so grateful, Mikki, everything you're doing and your team, and God bless you for all that you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I always like to give credit where credit is due. And I want to be clear, I'm the executive producer of this movie, and I was the one that initiated the movie, but I hired Matthew Guthrie to direct the movie. And you guys should have him on the show, because he literally, this was a divinely inspired mission of his. He'll tell the full story, but it's quite amazing. He started hearing about the injured people. He was on a shoot in the jungle someplace, I think Costa Rica, where with no cell service for 8 weeks. And when I started to look around for what, the right director for this film, because I realized I was already directing 2 or 3 movies at that time, and I said, it's just too much. I'll oversee it and make sure it has our stamp of approval, but I need a really good director who could bring the heart of this story and these victims' voices to life. I was referred to Matthew Guthrie. I tried his phone number, and it was the first time his phone had rang in 8 weeks. He happened to be up on a tower at the moment I called, and his phone rang, and he picked up. Hello? He hadn't heard a phone ring in 8 weeks. He won Best Director at the Santa Monica Film Festival, and the film won the Audience Award or the Grand Prize. And if you guys want to have him on your show at any moment, I would love for him to tell the story in its full detail.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll pass on his number.
All right. Appreciate you, Mikki. We're going to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, it's awesome having Mikki on. I just love it. I love what he's doing in his team. It's just fantastic. If you'd like to receive the free booklet, The Living Stone, A Journey of Transformation, you can. All you got to do is call our toll-free number, 1-800-445-3450 in the U.S. In Canada, you can call 1-800-915-0056. We'll send you a free copy. If you want to help support our mission, keep this kind of conversation and truth on the air, we need your support. You can go to our website to find out more about us, gotalktruth.com. If you'd like to give online, you can. If you'd like to do it by mail, you can. You can make your check payable to the Talk Truth Ministries and send it to 4904 South Power Road, Suite 103-152, Mesa, Arizona 85212. You can always call our toll-free number. You can give that way, or you can receive prayer. 1-800-445-3450 in the U.S., 1-800-915-0056 in Canada. Okay, Dad, we're out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.